Today we're going to go ahead and do two-step equations that include, multi-step equations that include fractions and decimals. There are no rules to this because we've gone over the rules in the past. So the rules are still going to apply for our multi-step equations as well as our fractions and our decimals. So there are 6 problems we're going to go ahead and do. I'll go ahead and do the first 3 for you. The second 3 is for you to practice on, and then we'll go ahead and share the results with you. So our first one is 2/3 times n minus 6 equals 22. So the same rules do apply, so I'm going to go ahead and box my variable, draw my line out, my equal sign. I go ahead and do plus 6. So now I have 2/3 n, and it equals 28. Okay. Now I have 2/3 times n, so this is where it gets different. Normally I would have multiplication, I would go ahead and divide because it's the opposite. So I would do 2/3 divided by 2/3. Now we know that when we go ahead and divide two fractions, we'll go ahead and use our rule of keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep the first fraction, change it to multiplication, and then I'm going to flip it to 3/2 instead of 2/3. So that is going to equal 6/6, which is equal to 1. So actually it just cancels the 2/3 out, and it creates, instead of 2/3 n, we have 1 n is left. So there's my 1 n. So I'm going to multiply by 3/2. And whatever I do to this side, I have to go ahead and do to this side. So I'll multiply by 3/2. Okay, so in the 28 to multiply becomes 28/1. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 28 times 3, which is equal to 84. And then 1 times 2 is equal to 2. I go ahead and simplify. 2 goes into 84 42 times. So n is equal to 42. So to check it, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. So I have 2/3 times 42 minus 6. Okay. So I go ahead and multiply these out. 42 becomes 42/1. So 2 times 42 is 84. 3 times 1 is 3. That's my minus 6. 84 divided by 3 is, it's going to be 28. And then minus 6. And I get 22. So 22 matches 22. Next problem we have is 2/3 times m minus 6 is equal to 3. And you can see we have parentheses, so we're going to go ahead and have to use our distributive property for this one. So 2/3 times m is nice and easy. Just becomes 2/3 m. Then our 2/3 times minus 6, I'm going to change 6 into a fraction. So I have 2 times 6 is 12. And then 3 times 1 is 3. And it's a positive times a negative, so I have a subtraction symbol there for a negative. Okay? We'll put our equals 3 there. Alright, now for this one you can also see that we can simplify our 12/3 to make it a whole number because 3 goes into 12 exactly 4 times. So let's go ahead and do that first. So we now have 2/3 m minus 4 equals 3. I'm going to go ahead and do plus 4. We get 2/3 m is equal to 7. Now again I have a 2/3 m, so I have a multiplying by a fraction. So instead of dividing by the same fraction, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, or multiply by the flip. Okay? So our 3/2 makes this a m times 2/3. And so I'm going to then multiply this side by 3/2 as well. Okay. My whole number gets turned into a fraction. 7 times 3 is 21. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay. Now I have m equals 21/2. I can simplify that. 2 goes into 21 10 times with 1 left over. giving me an answer of 10.5. So I'm going to go ahead and check that to make sure it works. So I'll go ahead and plug it in. I have 2/3. Then I have 10.5 minus 6. Okay. I can do what's inside of here first before I don't need to distribute it out yet. So I have 10.5 minus 6 is equal to 4.5. So now I have 2/3 times 4.5. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply my fractions now. My rule for multiplying fractions is I can't multiply my mixed numbers, so I have to turn it into an improper fraction. So 2/3 times, and then 4.5 becomes 9/2. Then I can go ahead and cross multiply, multiply across. 2 times 9 is 18. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 6 goes into 18 3 times. 3 matches my 3. My next one is a decimal problem. So I have, let's go ahead and box my variable, draw a line down it. 20 plus 0.15x equals 37.25. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract my 20 first. Okay. And one of the things you should do with this as well, which I didn't just do the first time, is I want to make sure I line up my decimals with this one, just as I would do when I subtract decimals anyways. So make sure my 20's lined up, my 10's lined up with the 10's, 1's is lined up with the 1's, my decimal might be here lined up with it, and anything after that should be lined up as well. It'll just make it a lot easier for me to do my work. So those get canceled out, and I'm left with 0.15x over here. And when I subtract over on this side, I would get 17.25. Next, I need to go ahead and divide 0.15 because this is multiplication. So I'm going to divide 0.15. Same thing I'm going to go ahead and do over here, 0.15. Okay. And I don't know this off the top of my head, so I need to go ahead and do the work for it. So I'm going to go ahead and do 17.25. On the outside we have 0.15. I'm going to go ahead and move my decimal place over twice. 1, 2. Same thing here. 1, 2. And then I'm going to place it up top here. 15 goes into 17 once. Bring down my 2. 15 goes in there once as well. Subtract, I get 7. Bring down my 5. And then 15 goes into 75 5 times. And I get an answer of 115. So x is equal to 115. So I need to go ahead and try that first to make sure it works. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this so I have some space. Alright. Let's go ahead and put it in my original problem. 20 plus 0.15 times 115. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is multiply. So I'm going to multiply 0.15 times 115. I'm going to multiply 0.15 as if it didn't have any decimals, so I move that decimal place over twice. So I get 115 times 15. Go ahead and multiply them out. Add them together. And I get 1,725. Because I moved the decimal place over here twice, I need to move back over twice, giving me a 17.25. And then I have 20 plus bring down, and I add 20 and 17.25, and I get 37.25. And yes, that matches up to it. So go ahead and pause your video right now, and I want you to go ahead and try the next 3 problems. Alright, your first practice problem was -7/10 times k plus 14 is equal to -21. You should have gotten an answer of k equals 50. Okay, and then when you plug it in, you should be able to get a matching answer of -21 and -21. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to see that one. Our next one was 1.5x minus 3.6 equals 2.4. You should have got an answer of x equals 4, and then when you went ahead and entered it in, you should have a matching answer of 2.4. Again, pause your video if you need to take a look at it. And our last one was 2/5 x plus 2 equals 3/4. You should have gotten an answer of x is equal to negative 25 over 8, or simplified negative 3 1/8. And then when you entered it back in, I found it easier just to enter my improper fraction in, because I was going to be multiplying. It's going to be a little bit easier. You should have gotten a 3/4. It's the same thing as 3/4. So that is multi-step equations using fractions and decimals.